My name is Christine Stevenak, and I'm the president of the Defiance AAUW branch. And we are pleased that you can join AAUW and Representative Fedor this evening. Celebrating 130 years, AAUW, or the American Association of University Women, has been the nation's leading voice promoting education and equity for women and girls. We have a nationwide network of nearly 100,000 members, 1,000 branches, and 500 college-university partners. AAUW helps break through educational and economic barriers so that all women have a fair chance. AAUW conducts groundbreaking research that draws national attention to issues such as the pay gap between men and women, economic security of older women, sexual harassment on college campuses, and gender equity in science and engineering education. Several of these reports have been made available by the Defiance AAUW branch at the Defiance College Pilgrim Library. The Defiance AAUW branch has worked with community partner Zonta to sponsor Sister to Sister Summits, a program that brings junior high girls together to discuss issues such as peer pressure and body image. In addition, we provide student scholarships to Be Wise camps, a mathematics, science, and technology program designed to develop interest, excitement, and self-confidence for junior high girls. AAUW Defiance also provides a scholarship to an entering freshman at the Defiance College. We are also pleased to be a partner with the Defiance College. This partnership allows us to provide presentations and opportunities to men and women on campus. Programs such as tonight's presentation are made possible by the help and support of the members of the AAUW Defiance branch, the Defiance College, and Dr. Ken Wetstein. AAUW meets the first Monday of the month at the Sarek Center at 7 p.m. Our meetings are open to all, including students. Each month features an informative and educational program that advocates for the mission and values of AAUW. More information about AAUW and joining AAUW is available at the table outside of the auditorium. In addition, if you are interested in any of the paperwork, please sign your name and address to the papers that are out there at the table so that we may contact you. Now, I would like to turn your attention to this evening's program. I would like to make a quick reminder that if you could turn your cell phone ringers off and not record, videotape, or take pictures or text during the program, we would appreciate that. Representative Theresa Fedor is serving her second term in the Ohio House of Representatives, representing the 47th House District. She spent 18 years in the classroom before pursuing public service. A proud veteran, she served in the United States Air Force and Ohio National Guard before receiving a BS in education from the University of Toledo. Protecting our most vulnerable young Ohioans is her driving force. Since joining the General Assembly, Representative Fedor has worked to improve opportunities for all citizens, especially our children. In 2009, the governor signed her human trafficking legislation into law, which created an enhancement in the criminal code for human trafficking and created a task force to study the problem in Ohio. In 2010, the governor signed into law landmark legislation that made human trafficking a standalone second-degree felony. Representative Fedor has introduced legislation that will curtail the growing problem of cyberbullying of school children, will honor literacy and educational attainment among children by celebrating a Dia de los Niños, will create health standards in Ohio schools, and will ensure that military children are given the same educational opportunities as other children. Each year, her campaign for healthy kids and communities takes her from Toledo to Columbus on her bike to the Capitol. The Bike to the Capitol has a threefold purpose: promote bicycle-friendly community initiatives, advocate for Senate Bill 174, the safer passing legislation, and support quality health and physical education in our public schools. Representative Fedor currently serves on the State Government and Elections Committee, the Education Committee, and the Veteran Affairs Committee. She serves as the ranking member on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. She is also the policy chair of the Ohio House Democratic Women's Caucus. Representative Fedor sits on the Trafficking in Persons Study Commission as the chairperson of the Legislative and Legal Subcommittee. She sits on the boards of UT3, Catherine S. Eberly Center for Women, and Yell and Tell Stop Child Abuse Now. A few years ago, I attended my first AAUW state convention. Representative Fedor spoke on a topic I had only read about in fictionalized books or saw in movies: human trafficking. If I reasoned that human trafficking, a modern-day slavery, existed, it did so in undeveloped nations. I never imagined that in today's civilized world, in the United States, and let alone in my own home state, that human trafficking was a problem. Since that convention, AAUW has worked with Representative Fedor to educate and promote her legislative efforts to abolish the horrors of this modern-day slavery. Please join me in a warm welcome, Representative Theresa Fedor.
Is it working? Here, okay, I can hear myself now. I want to do something first because I always forget to do it last. And that is to recommend a few books. And there are more and more now, but I think one that is particularly interesting, and one by a woman who was Congresswoman in Washington State, Linda Smith. She started her travel down this road internationally, and then found out there were more and more victims in the United States. She founded Shared Hope International. I don't know if you've heard of that. They recently put out a grade card for all the states in the United States on their addressing the response of human trafficking in the state, in all the states. And Ohio, unfortunately, received a D. You know, we're making our efforts have been long and hard and slow. This is our 6th year of addressing something that has not changed. It's only gotten worse and more. We have more victims every year. But and unfortunately, my 2-year-old dog's got a hold of it this weekend. It's called Renting Lacey. Renting Lacey. I don't need to use this mic, right? It just seems natural that I should. The next one is The Slave Next Door by Kevin Bales, Human Trafficking and Slavery in America Today. So this is a very good book to read to help you understand what is currently going on. And of course, David Batstone's Not for Sale. And it also depicts domestic and also international trafficking. But with that, I want to thank you for continuing your efforts in educating and advocating and making sure we're putting the proper response in every community, not only in the community but in the state, because we're really fighting this globally. And back in 2000, the U.S. enacted the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA, and then the United Nations adopted the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons. The protocol is known as the Palermo Protocol, and that's the standard that everyone is using around the world to fight trafficking. Since that time, it's been used to criminalize all acts of human trafficking, including forced labor and slavery. In 2010, the Trafficking in Persons Study Commission report was put on the Attorney General's website. And Rich Cordray was very active even before he was Attorney General, trying to make sure that we had a commission to study the scope of the problem. And once he became Attorney General, it was already enacted, and he chose, because it was permissive, to put that commission together and allowed me to put all the pieces and parts together. We had a subcommittee where there are 6 subcommittees that study the scope of the problem, but not only the scope of the problem, the recommendation that we need to fix this problem. And the approach to combating trafficking consists of 3 parts: prevention, protection, and prosecution. When we're done putting the important pieces, and I'll talk about the next piece of legislation, the Safe Harbor Act for Exploited Children, when we put these important pieces in law and policies in place in our communities and even at the state level, then we will have every angle covered, and we should be able to reduce and combat this horrific crime that's happening in our own backyards. And once we put the glasses on, we begin to see, yes, this is happening. And we've just had some recent cases over the weekend that have been reported that I'm going to talk to you about. But human trafficking has been rivaling the illegal drug and arms trade as the world's fastest growing criminal enterprise. It's estimated that it is a $32 billion a year industry. And it's hard, cold cash. And unlike arms and drugs, human beings can be sold over and over and over. And in commercial sex trafficking, they will have anywhere from 20 to 30 customers a night. That's one night. And of course, these slaves don't get any of the money, and they live horrific lives. And we often say, oh, they're just prostitutes. And women, when you think about it, and I've done the history of prostitution in this country. Very interesting. And I think it applies even today. It's either done out of need or force. Need or force. Because I taught kindergarten. I don't know any 5-year-old who went into that dress-up corner, dressed themselves up as a prostitute, and said they're going to be a prostitute. I want to be a prostitute when I grow up. And no 16-year-old girl wants to have sex with a 50-year-old man. I'm trying to make you laugh. I mean, these are the realities. And you have to face the realities of what this is so that we can really get at the important pieces. Because our children are very vulnerable. The risk pool of children crosses every socioeconomic level in our society. Rural, suburban. We have cases in nearly all 88 counties in the state of Ohio. Chillicothe, the safe neighborhoods. They're not so safe. Not with this particular crime and how they're operating. So we'll get into that. It's worth really understanding the scope of the problem because you need to be the solution. I'm only the tip of the spear. And it's taken me a long time to convince my male colleagues that this just isn't, prostitution. Boys will be boys, our rite of passage. Some were in the military. I was in the military. I know those attitudes. And I'm just going to be real to you. Because that's the only way I've gotten anything done in this state, especially for our children. We do not pay attention to the health and well-being of our children. And this is the point. 6 years it took for us to model the federal legislation. We were the 45th state to put a standalone felony in our criminal code. And the pimps walked out of the halls of justice, and we arrested the victims. And the Johns, there are 1,000 prostitutes that get arrested for every 10 Johns, or customers, however you want to think about it. But we're going to curb the demand, and at the same time that we are going to be protecting the victims, because we need the victims, first of all, rescued, right? They need rescue. You can clap on that. They're waiting for us to rescue them. I don't sleep at night, and many of the people that have been working with me do not sleep until we can start rescuing them. When we start sending the message that if you pick up a phone, there's an 800 hotline number, there's a poster here, that's all part of my next piece of legislation. They pick up the phone, they're going to get help, they're going to get rescued. Right now, they don't think anybody cares because they're threatened. They're told nobody cares. You're going to get arrested. You're going to be in trouble. Look at the shame. Nobody's going to want you. You know, they've been drugged, beaten, raped. You know, that's for women. These men, and it isn't just men. There are two mothers who are sisters who prostituted their children in Toledo. And one of the 13-year-old daughters called the 8100 hotline number that's going to be part of my legislation, not for herself, but for her 9-year-old sister who was getting ready to be turned out at the migrant farms in Fulton County, where they had sex 20 men a night by their mothers. So it isn't street prostitution, or what most men I heard say, prostitution is the oldest
profession.
Not everyone.
Profession.
Profession, if you will. No, prostitution is the oldest oppression of women in the world, and we're going to change that. Every woman in America, the day they're born in America, I don't care where they come from, they deserve to have a right to live the American dream. It should not matter what neighborhood they go home to when they leave the hospital, right? That's my goal for our children. Because at 18, all of a sudden, we kick them out, we break the plate, and they're adults. The older folks know what that means. You break the plate, you can't eat here anymore. I'm one of 7 kids, and my dad says, we're going to break the plate here soon. But he never really meant that. But we really need to see that, you know, the young adults are just as vulnerable as they were when they're 16. They're just as vulnerable when they're 25. And really, that's the period where the people who are doing this, and I have no sympathy for them, if they cross that line and they want to enslave people, especially in labor or commercial sex trafficking, Katie, hold the bars, because they're going to go to jail for a really long time if I have anything to do with it. We're going to put the real criminals behind bars with this. I kind of sound like I'm preaching now. But we do have and discovered human trafficking in Ohio, so it's thriving here. It thrives, you know, internationally and also among the states. Toledo is ranked 4th in the nation, the number of kids who are recruited for sex trafficking, according to the FBI task force. And when they took a look at all of their FBI stings, Toledo had the #1 per capita then of children being trafficked. And those are my babies. I was a senator at the time. I was a kindergarten teacher. Those were my babies. But we didn't see it because they crossed state lines. It happens in many forms and fashions. The internet, social networking, you'll see, is a big part of this. And it's growing every day. But the good news is, Toledo didn't say, woe is me. This is terrible. We started working immediately. The week the story came out in the Blade about the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania arrest, we had a group, 50 people showed up in the community when we realized that this was happening. So we are really at the tip of the spear in solving the problem. Even though, you know, we were recognized because whenever the FBI task force did their stings throughout the United States, they kept coming up with Toledo victims. They kept saying, why Toledo? Why Toledo? They didn't understand it. So then we were able to get an FBI task force and understand it. But I think the lesson learned through that, the Toledo pimps were just smart enough to fill the gap in Oklahoma when they did a bust in Oklahoma. but it could have been Findlay, Detroit, Cincinnati, Columbus. You know, those operators are there as well. They're operating. We now know that it extends much further than Toledo, and the FBI task force now has a sister task force in Cleveland, and they're really working on those issues. And also in Columbus, they have a lot of very articulate, trained, and experienced policemen that are working on this. So we're going to get started. How long do I have? Okay. I can do whatever I want. This is dangerous. Remember, I'm a teacher, so it's very comfortable for me. So who are the victims? They may be U.S. citizens, legal permanent residents, or foreign-born. And basically, a lot of the victims, especially with today's stressful economic times, more and more people are at risk to be victims. The largest group of trafficking victims in the U.S. is now thought to be children who are U.S. citizens or illegal permanent residents. And Nicholas Kristof, journalist and author of Half the Sky, that's another book, I haven't read it yet, but that's a very good book. The worst exploitation is often directed at American teenage girls who flee abusive homes, end up at the bus station. The only person there to help them is a pimp. And they're usually contacted within 48 hours of being run away. 48 hours. And when you think about it, well, many of the victims came from abusive homes. They may have been abused. They're going through the children's services, maybe the court system, but we're not really addressing the trauma care that they need for that horrific life event. So we're really taking a look at how we're addressing the needs of children if they're going through a lot of trauma. How many here are social workers? Thank you, God bless you. Besides a first grade teacher and a kindergarten teacher, social workers are very, very important in our society, and we need to do more to support them. There are more and more needs and more victims. But the trauma care, and I've talked to Judge Zemmelman from Toledo, and she works with a lot of our cases and with the FBI in helping us work on the next piece of legislation. You know, she's holding 4 girls right now in the jail system. But she's not holding them for prostitution. They're victims of trafficking. There's 4 of them right now. There's no place to put them. Children's Services, they can start training foster care, and therapeutic foster care is what we really need. Foster care placement that's going to address this type of trauma. We can't have a June Cleaver, leave it to Beaver family. We're finding out that that doesn't work for these victims. More times they run away because they can't relate. And so there are certain types of homes that we know we need that would address victims as they're coming out of that horrific life and into the process of reintegrating themselves. I don't know how you actually recover